Good afternoon, Regents. I'm going to ask you to turn your cameras on if possible as we call this regular meeting of the Board of Regents of the Del Mar College District to order at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, December 8th. Due to the continued COVID-19 pandemic protocols, we are conducting this meeting via video and teleconference. And the public has been allowed opportunity to live stream the meeting both online as well as listen to audio of the meeting in real time. I'm going to do a roll call. Regent Adami?
Here.
Regent Averett?
Here.
Regent Bennett?
Here.
Regent Garza?
Here.
Regent Hutchison?
Here.
Regent Sherwood?
Here.
I'm Regent Scott, and we have as our guest Dr. Lori Turner, who will be taking her oath of office in just a few minutes. It is my understanding that both Regent Estrada and Regent Salinas will not be able to join us today for our meeting. We do have a quorum and can conduct business. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as is our practice, please join me in reading the Del Mar College Vision Statement. Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Del Mar College is streaming live audio and video from the official Board of Regents meeting on the college's website in real time, with the exception of portions of the meeting considered as closed session by statute. We did not have any public comment register for today's meeting, so we will move directly into the swearing in of our duly elected members of the Board of Regents. So Jessica, I'm going to ask if you are present.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
All righty.
Okay. Will the three elected regents, Dr. Turner, Dr. Adame, and Ms. Scott, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name.
I,
Lori Turner,
Do solemnly swear
do
I
solemnly
solemnly
swear
swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will
I faithfully will execute the duties
of the office of Regent of the Del Mar College District
of the office of Regent of the Del Mar
office of
College
the
District
Regent of the District
of the State of Texas
of
of the State of Texas
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the
and will
best
to
of
my
my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
preserve,
protect, and defend the Constitution
and the laws of the United States and of this state.
and the laws of the United States and of this state.
So help me God.
So
So
help
help
me
me.
God.
Congratulations, Regents.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, everyone.
We would like to offer the opportunity for Regent Turner and Dr. Adami to make a few words of thank you to folks who supported them in the election. Dr. Turner, I'll let you go first.
All right, well, thank you so much. This has been a dream come true. I've been wanting to be on the board for several years, coming from a public school background and a doctorate in education and focusing on students and opportunities, access, and the consequences of education and how it changes people's lives. I'm the strong supporter of education and higher ed, and I just want to thank all the supporters who believe in me and that I will do diligence to this office. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. Dr. Adami?
Yes, first off, I want to thank the community for your vote of confidence. Thank you very much. I appreciate the confidence and, of course, the commitment I have to higher education. Out of, for me, political positions, as far as partisan, nonpartisan, this is the most important position anyone could hold because it deals with education. And my commitment to education has always been there. So again, I want to thank the community for your vote of confidence, and my commitment will always be there, especially for Del Mar College. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adami. I too would like to share my thanks to the voters for continuing to allow me to serve Del Mar College. It has been a true privilege to be a part of this board for the last 6 years, and I look forward to our continued work together. I do want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Mary Sherwood for her years of service as an appointed trustee or appointed regent to fill an unexpired term. Dr. Sherwood, you brought great insight and intelligence and wisdom to your position, and we cannot thank you enough for your dedication. Would like to offer the opportunity for other board members to speak, and then allow you to say a few words as you close out your tenure as a regent. Ms. Hutchison, I notice your mic is open.
Sure, I'll kick this off. I'm remembering when Mary first told me that she was considering submitting her name for appointment, and I could not imagine a better candidate, a better person for this position. My expectations were very high, and Mary exceeded every one of them. And the first sign I knew that we made the right decision was right after we announced to her that she was the new appointee. Within literally seconds, she was sitting at the desk, opening her binder and asking her first insightful question. And I mean, Mary doesn't miss a beat. And it is very hard to be more prepared than Mary, more informed, more diplomatic. She leaves very, very big shoes to fill, and she inspires us all to be better. So her time has been well spent here, and we will miss her. Thank you, Mary.
Other regents? Libby?
Yes, I've known Mary for quite some time. We were actually reporters together back a long time ago at the Caller Times, and it has certainly been my privilege to watch Mary's continued growth and contributions to the community. And like Susan said, when I heard that she had been appointed to the unexpired term, I couldn't think of a better match given her years of experience and expertise in higher education and in community service. So Mary, I will miss sitting next to you when we get to get back in person, but I very much appreciate the help that you gave me since my appointment. And I also want to congratulate Dr. Adami, Dr. Turner, and Chairwoman Scott on your election to the board as well.
Thank you. Dr. Sherwood, would you like to make a few comments?
Yes, it's first of all, congratulations to Dr. Adame and you, Carol Scott, and to Dr. Turner on your elections. And it's really been both my honor and my privilege to be on the board. I've learned so much about Del Mar, even though I was in higher ed for 27 years on the four-year college side, and I knew some about Del Mar. I learned so much, and I really appreciated that opportunity and the opportunity to work with all of the regents and with Dr. Escamilla, such a great leader for the college. So it was not an easy decision to make not to run. Of course, no guarantee I would have been elected, but it wasn't easy to decide that maybe I needed to step back and pay attention to some other things. With all that said, I am going to stay involved with the college. I've already been appointed to be on a advisory board for the physical therapy assistant program. And my husband and I have just gone through the steps of establishing, for the short term, a direct scholarship for students. And then we're also establishing an endowed scholarship in the long term. So, you know, really, Del Mar is in my heart, and you all are in my heart. So, and thank you all for the kind words.
Thank you, Dr. Sherwood. I can't think of a better way to leave a legacy in higher education than through a scholarship. You and Ron are to be commended for that decision. Thank you very much. We look forward to following you on Facebook and your gardening and cycling and other retirement activities, and well-deserved. Thank you again for your service.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
At this point in time, it is our opportunity to reorganize the Board of Regents for election of officers for the next biennium. Are there nominations for the office of chair? Susan?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion in favor of continuity and in recognitions for the great leadership we have had, and I would nominate Carol Scott to fill the position of chair.
Thank you very much,
I
Susan.
would second that.
Thank you, Dr. Adami. I do appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve. Are there other nominations for chair? Seeing none, all those in favor of the election of Carol Scott as chair of the board, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. I appreciate that and look forward to the opportunity to continue to serve. I especially appreciate, given the last 2 years and the difficulty of my service during medical treatment, but I hope the last year or during that time has proven my dedication, so I certainly appreciate the opportunity to continue that and continue it healthy for the next 2 years. Watch out, Dr. Escamilla, we have a lot of work to do. Now the opportunity for first vice chair. Is there a nomination for first vice chair of the board? Libby?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Nick Adami as first vice chair.
Thank you. Dr. Adami, are you willing to serve?
I am.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Is there a second to that motion?
I would second that nomination.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchison. All those in favor of electing Dr. Nick Adami as our first vice chair, please raise your hand. Any opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. Dr. Nick Adami is elected as our first vice chair. For the position of second vice chair, is there a nomination? Dr. Turner?
Yes, I have one.
Yes, sir. Dr. Turner.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Ed Bennett. He's been a service for Del Mar. He's financial savvy, and I think he would be instrumental in being part of the executive committee.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. Are there other nominations for second vice chair? Dr. Adami?
I'd like to nominate Ms. Susan Hutchinson for second vice chair.
Okay. Are there other nominations? Seeing none, we will do a roll call vote, and you will express your vote for either Mr. Bennett or Ms. Hutchison. Dr. Adami?
Ms. Hutchinson?
Ms. Averett?
Ms. Hutchinson?
Mr. Bennett?
Me.
Mr. Garza?
Bennett.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, you said, correct? Yes. Ms. Hutchison?
And I will vote for myself.
Thank you. Dr. Turner?
Ed Bennett.
And I will vote for Susan Hutchison. So with 4 votes, Ms. Hutchison is elected as our second vice chair. Thank you, Ms. Hutchison, and thank you, Mr. Bennett, for your willingness to serve. There are nominations now open for secretary of the board. Dr. Adami? Oh, I saw your mic open.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Ms. Libby Averett for secretary of the board.
Okay. Mr. Bennett, I see your mic is open.
It is. I'd like to nominate Dr. Turner.
Okay. Thank you. Are there other nominations? Seeing none, we will do the same thing in reverse order. Dr. Turner, your vote, please.
Thank you for the nomination, and I obviously will, I guess, vote for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hutchison?
I'll place my vote for Libby Averitt.
Thank you. Mr. Garza?
Libby Everett.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett?
Dr. Turner.
Thank you. Ms. Averitt?
I'll vote for myself.
Thank you. Dr. Adami?
Ms. Averitt?
Thank you. And I will vote for Ms. Averitt as well. So with that, Libby Averitt is elected as the secretary of the board. Thank you all very much. Ms. Delia Pettis will be, and Dr. Natalie Villarreal will be in touch with the members of the executive committee regarding our regular meetings. We try to set up an executive committee meeting 10 days to 2 weeks prior to the board meeting to review the agenda. And again, the executive committee doesn't take any action. The board does not specifically authorize it to do so. It is just an advisory committee to primarily to help set the agenda for board meetings. Welcome, and look forward to working with all of you as we continue to move forward. So, as our part of our, now moving on to our regular agenda, Dr. Turner, we offered this opportunity to Mr. Garza, and it's still an opportunity for Mr. Garza as well as any board members to ask questions as we go along. With the way the protocol is working on these Zoom meetings, if you open your mic, that tells me that you have a question or a comment, so I try to keep an eye out for open mics. If I miss you, don't hesitate to holler out, because that's not a problem either. We're trying to conduct these as best we can, but for the most part, folks keep their mics muted during the course of the meeting. But again, as you have questions as you go along, staff and board members try to do a pretty good job of helping set context as we move through different items. As part of our regular practice, we do provide opportunity to recognize faculty and students who have achieved significant milestones or recognitions at the beginning of our meeting each time. And so with that, we are going to hear from Dr. Jonda Holcomb, our interim chief academic officer and provost, about some faculty recognitions. Dr. Holcomb.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Regents, and Dr. Escamilla. Today, I'd like to recognize Dr. Tammy Francis, Assistant Professor of Reading and Faculty Coordinator of Developmental Education, for her receipt of 2 accolades. I will talk about both accolades, then ask Dr. Francis if she'd like to say anything. Dr. Francis was selected by her peers and the Faculty Professional Recognition and Awards Committee to be the college's 2021 Piper Professor nominee. The Piper Professor Award recognizes professors for outstanding academic, scientific, and scholarly achievement and for dedication to the teaching profession. She demonstrated her commitment to quality teaching and student success. In addition to her teaching duties, she serves as coordinator of developmental education. Her submission packet included the nomination form, curriculum vitae, and 6 outstanding letters of support from her department chair and colleagues. The Minnie Stevens Piper Foundation will select and award 10 recipients an honorarium of $5,000 each for superior teaching at the college level. If our college's nominee is chosen, the Piper Foundation Selection Committee will inform Dr. Francis in May of 2021, and I wish her the best of luck. Also, Dr. Tammy Francis was recognized this year by Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society for her 5 years of service as advisor for the Gamma Sigma chapter at Del Mar College. Phi Theta Kappa expressed a tremendous debt of gratitude to Dr. Francis as chapter advisor for her dedicated service and responsibility for the success of the local chapters. The recognition includes a gift of appreciation from the PTK Honor Society. She hasn't seen it yet. I don't know if you can see it here, but a very nice pen. You'll have to come pick it up, Tammy, or we'll deliver it to you. Okay, great. And so we're really pleased that she has these accolades. I worked with her for years, and she's tremendous. And I want you to join me in congratulating Dr. Francis for her selection as the college's nominee for the Piper Award and her service as advisor. And I think we'd like to hear from Dr. Francis. Tammy, would you like to say anything?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Halcomb. I appreciate you, and it has been a pleasure working with you as well. Thank you for this recognition. Thank you to the committee and Dr. Patty Walter, who nominated me, and the colleagues who wrote the letters. It was an amazing surprise, and I am truly honored and appreciative of this honor. And it is an honor to serve our students here at Del Mar College. That is both in the classroom and in their extracurricular opportunities. And so this is really an honor today to be a part of the meeting and for this recognition. Thank you so much. And I look forward to continue serving.
Congratulations, Dr. Francis. Yes, it's the virtual applause. We do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We do appreciate you, and we appreciate the example of the fine faculty that we have at Del Mar College. We know that amongst your peers, this is a fabulous recognition for you, and we thank you and congratulate you. More importantly, and not more importantly, but I think it is just as important to recognize your service for our students as the advisor for the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society. That is tremendous, and we thank you for that volunteering of that extra time and duty for our students as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Dr. Francis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting us have time to recognize our outstanding faculty. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and you know that invitation is open anytime. Moving on with our agenda, we will have our now regular student success reports. As part of our board retreat last May, the board expressed a desire to hear more regular reports on the different aspects of strategies and tactics related to student success and persistence. And so today we have two of them from Dr. Rito Silva and Miss Mary McQueen. Dr. Silva? I'm sorry, Dr. Escamilla, did you have anything that you wanted to introduce?
No, ma'am. Let's get right into it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Dr. Silva.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Board of Regents, and President Escamilla. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss the success of our fire science program licensing passing rate. Before I begin, I want to thank Dean Merrill Davis for the information for today's presentation. Next slide, please. As you see by this chart, Del Mar College fire science students have continuously exceeded the state average for fire protection licensing exam, with the most recent exam showing a 73% passing rate in the first attempt and an 87% passing rate on their second attempt, while the state average is 60%. The success in the Del Mar College fire science program is a direct reflection to the instructors that are currently on the roster and the effort they put in every day. They are led by Chief Mike Smith, who serves as program coordinator for the program and has since 2018. Chief Smith took over the program, implemented a new policy, and increased the rigor of the coursework, and it has become one of the most successful programs in the state of Texas. In regards to Texas Commission on Fire Protection licensing exam, the state implemented a completely new exam in the fall of 2019, and the Del Mar College Fire Academy graduates had the highest average in the state for the new exam, with an overall average of 87. Next slide, please. In the spring of 2018, the Del Mar College Fire Academy and the Del Mar College EMT paramedic programs began a partnership with the Corpus Christi Fire Department to train their new fire cadets and prepare them for the state exam while they work in the field for the city of Corpus Christi. These cadets are hired by the city and sent through the Del Mar College Fire Academy EMT paramedic program. These cadets are full-time employees. And as the chart shows, these cadets are driven to succeed, and their pass rate is exceptional, with a 93.5% first attempt passing rate and 100% second attempt passing rates. Once again, this is due to the effort of the students in the fire science program and their wonderful academy instructors. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any questions or comments for Dr. Silva? Thank you so much. Ms. McQueen.
Try it with the mic on. If we could move, I don't think we're doing the right one on there. I'm looking for the scholarship results page. Can y'all see the right page? Anyway, we did a research project thanks to the IR department, the Institutional Research Department, to figure out exactly how successful scholarships were in helping students complete their courses and complete their area of study. It was important for us to get this information to share with donors to show that their investment in student lives really makes a difference. We studied 3 different cohorts: the foundation scholars, students with financial aid, and those students who had no financial aid at all. We looked for 3 academic terms, and the information I'm going to give you is an average of the fall 2017, 2018, and 2019. The information that you see, well, hopefully we'll see, is that on course completion, foundation scholars completed their courses at a 8.9% higher rate than those students who had financial aid. The foundation scholars also had course completion at a 12.3% higher rate than those students who had no financial support. For us, a course completion is really important, but actually it's the program completion. Oh, there we go. The program completion, and if we can scroll down just a little bit. Thank you. Keep scrolling. A little bit more. There we go. The program completion is probably the most important. We found that foundation scholars completed their program of study, or they graduated, at a 19.2% rate higher than those students who got financial aid support. They also completed their courses at a 24.1% higher rate than those students who had no financial aid, which this is important because the scholarships, 10% of the community college funding comes from the state is determined on student achievement. And one of those areas of achievement certainly is performance-based. Are they completing their courses of study? Are they completing a certain number of hours? So we find that the students report that by donors providing them access to education, that's a motivational push that fuels their inspiration to succeed and hopefully eventually pay it forward. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Very interesting statistics. Are there any comments or questions for Ms. McQueen? We'll hear a full foundation update in a few minutes. Yes, Dr. Turner.
I have a question on the foundation scholars. Now, is the money distributed by semester? So there's some stipulation where you need to, master, you need to be passing at a certain level, like a 3.0. Is there some, there's some guidelines for them to continuing with the scholars program? I understand financial aid, they fail, they just, they pay it back, they dropped out. But I was wondering, for them to continue with the money, are there stipulations in place? Sorry, I don't know, kind of roundabout way.
No, it's an excellent question. Yes, there are stipulations. All of those stipulations are set forth with 2 different guidelines. One is the overall guideline that the Del Mar College Foundation Board of Trustees has created. So we do not provide scholarships for any student who does not have it or maintain a 2.0 GPA, either continuing on or getting the scholarship. But the donors at certain levels get to establish. If it's a named scholarship, a donor can establish a level at which they want the students to perform in order to continue getting the scholarship. And we do that. We check that every single year. So they'll get the scholarship for an academic year, they get it for the fall, and then we double check that they're continuing to meet the criteria for any subsequent awarding.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. McQueen, and we look forward to your full report in a few minutes. All right. Moving on to our college president's report. He is going to give us a campus update.
I'll be brief, Madam Chair. As we near the end of the fall semester, Regents, I want everyone to know that less than 5% of our student body is coming to our face-to-face class for their requirements. And that data point really was last week. As we've entered this week and are addressing finals in earnest, that number is even less. I want everyone to know that as many employees, and the preponderance, therefore, are working remotely due to our current situation. Our current situation is that we're in flu season, and for at least the next 12 weeks. And so as such, we'll continue to watch the situation along with COVID-19 and remain focused on the health and safety of all who step foot on the campus. We continue to develop contingency plans to prepare. And like I've talked to the college, I said, look, things are either going to stay the same, they're going to get worse, or they're going to get better. And those are the three scenarios we're working under and preparing to shift under all cases. And we'll be watching the data and watching the information, working with our governmental entities all throughout the next few weeks into the holidays and so forth. Shifting gears on topics on a lighter note, celebratory note. As a reminder, the Fall 2020 virtual commencement ceremony will begin at 7 p.m. this Friday, December 11th. That'll be on YouTube. Look for your social media accounts and those kinds of things, your email accounts, and we'll be sending out that information. It's the third time we've done this. It will be broadcast on the college's social media channels, as I was saying. So please join us and help celebrate our students' achievements during these most unusual times, but still a great opportunity for a celebratory moment. As I was mentioning about the holidays, Del Mar College will be closed for the winter break from December 20, depending on how you slice it. So December 18th is the last day. So between December 21st to January 3rd are the actual days that will be closed. We will look forward in earnest to January and helping our students enroll for spring classes. You know, this opportunity of not having a board meeting in January is very purposeful for lots of reasons. Because once we come on and off the holidays, many people will continue working through the holidays, but coming off the holidays and getting those students enrolled is our primary focus. And we're going to be doing that and having divisional meetings as we move into, come out of the holidays and hit the ground running in January. Finally, I'd just like to remind everybody, happy holidays to the entire Del Mar College family. This is my opportunity to say it. I hope we say it again before we break. We're looking forward to everybody having a healthy, safe, and enjoyable, restful holiday break. That concludes my reports. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, I see that your mic is open.
It is. Doctor, is there any indication of the enrollment trend for the spring?
Yes, so we're watching right now, and what we have right now is very similar to what we saw last week over the summer. We're showing that it's sluggish, just like we did in the summer coming into the fall, and so we're waiting for that accordion is just expanding right now, and the students are very sluggishly enrolling as they are throughout the state. And that's why we're going to be focused heavily on them in January. I can tell you we're down just like we were prior to the fall enrollment. I don't have that number unless Dr. Silva's with us. It's
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
Yes, sir. As of yesterday, we were down 6%. But we started, like Dr. Escamilla said, for the
Okay.
first week as starting off more than that. So they're coming back.
Yeah,
But
they're
again,
waking
like
up.
Dr. Escamilla said, it's compressing. They'll be coming back a little bit later than usual. And talking to my colleagues across the state, that seems to be the trend through the state of Texas.
Yeah. So
Is that down 6% year to year?
spring
Yes,
to
sir.
spring.
Day to day.
Day to day, yeah. So, very, very expected. 6% is a lot better than I expected for this time, frankly, because it was much worse just a couple of weeks ago. But I know not to be so reactive. We've seen this before. We've been through this already. We know the activities. I know, based on our previous presentation, how busy our enrollment teams are. And so we're hearing from the students, and we're hearing the trends, and we're listening to the repetitive refrains from our students, and being able to assess. My biggest concern is when that accordion compresses and they all come back, and we have to deal with them, or we get to deal with them. We want to deal with them in a compressed manner in January. So. Feeling very, very optimistic about the spring enrollment. Again, yet cautiously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Escamilla, I wanted to join you in saying thank you and happy holidays to our faculty and staff.
Absolutely.
I also want to emphasize the importance of folks taking this break. A lot of your faculty did not really get a spring break, and they certainly came back in March and had to revamp all that they were doing. There were a lot of faculty who worked extra over the summer to continue to revamp their programs to online classes. I know that your staff has worked diligently around both health and safety protocols since then. So I truly hope that you and all of your faculty and staff can take this break. I know that recharge is important, and that we have felt like we've just been in a constant state of crisis for the past 9 months. And so I sincerely appreciate that you couch the January meeting in terms of our focus on students, which is always the case. But in this light, it's also a focus for our faculty and staff to be able to take a well-deserved break. So,
No, absolutely.
on behalf of the board, happy holidays to everyone, and please take that time off.
Duly noted. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on, board notifications. From time to time, the board has policies that are B policies. Administration has A policies. And Dr. Escamilla and his staff have to document those A policies, but they're not necessarily presented for board approval. From time to time, we will have policies that are presented to us that are required board notifications. And that is the situation today, is we have changes to a administrative policy B.9.1 that they're required to bring to us for notification, but not required for board action. So with that introduction, I'm going to ask Ms. Tammy McDonald, our Chief Human Resource Officer. Did I get that title correct?
That's one of them.
That's one of them, and who also oversees our policies, to please present on this advised administrative procedure for policy B.9.1.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Scott. I provided, in this notification, I also provided the related B board policy, which was presented to the board in August and was accepted for approval. This has to do with the Department of Ed, Office of Civil Rights, the new regulation changes and guidance that was put out this summer on Title IX, specifically for how a complaint is reported and investigated for it was called sexual violence, now it's sexual misconduct. So that particular board policy, the board accepted it and approved all of the new federal and also some state mandates that were changed. This is the final form, I guess you could say, of the administrative procedures that were revised. So it is quite lengthy. I assure you that everything in here is what was absolutely required by the new guidance that was issued by the federal government. And so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But like I said, it is quite lengthy, and every part of this is a required portion that was mandated by the changes in Title IX. And then, like I said, a little bit through SB 212 for the state. So these are all administrative procedures.
So this was provided to the board in advance of the meeting as well. Are there any questions or comments for Ms. McDonald? If not, thank you for this presentation and notification of these policy changes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to our staff reports, we'll now invite back Ms. Mary McQueen to give us her annual foundation update.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it, Madam Chair, Regents, and Dr. Escamilla, to give you this annual report from the foundation. If you'd like to move forward, please. There we go. Basically, we have two different departments over here in fundraising and foundation services. Development fundraising manages donor development and stewardship. We have major gift initiatives, special events that we host to raise funds, annual campaigns, planned giving, and corporate and foundation grants wherein the college is the fiscal agent. Next slide, please. Uh-oh, we're out of memory. Okay. We're going to try this again?
Hang on, Mary.
Okay. That's what I get for putting all those pictures in there. There we go. Try it again. Okay. There we go. The foundation services component manages scholarships, the scholarship application and awarding of scholarships, also the donor database, the Del Mar College financials, and the asset management for the assets held at the foundation. Next slide. Right now, the foundation assets, or more specifically, the foundation assets as the end of our fiscal year, which is June 30th of each year. For 2020, it was $25.4 million in assets. As of October, I wanted to give you kind of an update. It was 26.6 million. I just did the financials this week, and as of the end of November, we are at $28.4 million in assets. So the assets for the foundation have quadrupled since 2009. Those are the assets, obviously. The fundraising, that's the monies that we actually bring in that can do all the good work that the college is doing and that the foundation can support. So for fiscal year 2020, we actually raised $4.8 million. That was a 29% increase over 2019, and that is a record high. However, I will tell you, I think it's more important to look at the 5-year fundraising average. Fundraising has a tendency to move up and down depending on where you are with major gift initiatives. So the 5-year average between 2016 and 2020 is $3 million per year. Next slide, please. What you see before you is kind of the asset growth. So you can see the asset growth since June 2009, kind of an overview. Next slide. Juxtaposed to that is the annual funds raised in that same time period. And you can see how they move up and down through the years. Next slide, please. Scholarships are probably our most important focus. It's not our singular focus, but it's one of the most important things that we do to support the college because it provides access to students, of which so many of them have financial need in order to complete their education. This past year, 2019 and 2020, we awarded 1.6, almost 1.7 million in scholarships through the foundation. That was 1,598 students served for FY 2020. And over the past 3 years, 4,325 students have received scholarships. And to give you a kind of an idea of how that works with financial aid, 10,960 students have received financial aid of any nature during the past 3 years. Next slide, please. Just as important is emergency aid and scholarships. These are a little different in that emergency aid is funds that we raise specifically to help students who have some kind of crisis that may stop them from continuing their education. It could be they need money for food, they need money for gas, they need money to get a new tire or fix a car, or they may be on the verge of eviction, so they may need some money in order to stay in their household. So we do, these are manual awards. We do these ongoing, and since January 2020, we've given out almost 90,000. You can certainly understand that actually includes a lot of the COVID-19 emergency aid that the foundation has provided. In addition to that, there's almost $120,000 in emergency scholarships. Emergency scholarships are those students who, for some reason or other, had a challenge and they could not pay for their a component anyway of their tuition or fees. And so we, once again, on a case-by-case basis, look at those. We've managed to help 220 students since January. Obviously, the incidence of needing emergency scholarship has increased quite a bit based on COVID-19. Next slide, please. There we go, that one. This again is a longitudinal look at the number of the amount of scholarships that we have awarded each year through the foundation. And all of this is based on our audited financials for the Del Mar College Foundation. Next slide, please. This is basically what we went over a little bit earlier, a report of the research on how effective scholarship support is in helping students complete their program of education. Next slide, please. Just as important in fundraising is stewardship, sharing information with donors, how the impact of their investment in Del Mar College and its students is working towards supporting our community and our community's growth. So one of the things we do is an annual scholarship report. This goes out to every scholarship donor, whether it's an endowed scholarship or a direct scholarship. You can see that it's a 4-color piece. It's actually, we do a mail merge and we print them and send them out to the donors. It includes the balance in their particular fund and the amount distributed for that year, the names of the students, and we also ask every student to provide us with a bio so we can share that with their donor, so the donor gets to know that student a little bit better. And then it provides a snapshot of the foundation. These reports are sent in February and March of each year so that we can give information, fiscal information as of December 31st for each year. Next slide, please. Another stewardship component that we do is the annual scholarship reception, where we invite the donors to reception and then we invite their students so they get to meet and greet and get to know a little bit about their students. Obviously, for 2020, that had to be virtual. So what we did was reach out to the students and ask them to share a video of thank you with their donors. We have more than 100, I think 150 by now, video or messages that have been collected, and then the development officers send those out to the donors, and then the donors get an opportunity, if they would like, to send a video message back to their students. So if you would click on that hyperlink, please, and then we'll go to one of these, we hope. And we should be able to go to one of the videos that was submitted by a student. And it doesn't look like it's going to connect. That's all right. That's all right.
Let's try.
If we go back to the presentation. We actually, while we're waiting to get back to the present, there we go. Oh, here we go. Oh, you can't hear Rice. Okay. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to hear her.
But the link
this
should,
particular
Mary,
student,
Mary, should the link work through our board packet, correct? So we can go back and listen
Yes.
to it individually. Okay.
Absolutely, you can go back. This particular student received a scholarship from Jean and Ellen Seaman, and she was so grateful because she wasn't quite sure she was going to be able to continue through with her education. So she was very, very grateful. Next slide, please. And it's been really rewarding seeing how the donors are so appreciative of being able to hear from their students. We do have a planned giving program that was initiated in 2017. At this point, we have 6.6, almost 6.7 million in deferred gifts, which was about a 600% increase over what we had prior to the initiation of the planned giving program. Next slide, please. We also do special fundraising projects for those needs that the college has. So for instance, over the past, I would say 6 years, we've raised probably closer to $10 million in workforce equipment. This $6 million reflects approximately the last 3 years. We also raised $125,000 in COVID relief. Those are the ones that specifically help the students for the emergency aid. And the Rebuild Texas Carpentry Program, which was $1.2 million, was an initiative run through the foundation. We wrote the grant, and obviously the wonderful people at the college have been providing that program, and it's received governor recognition for being an incredible asset to our community. Next slide. Our focus in fundraising is to increase the person-to-person fundraising. We think that's the most significant way to make a long-term impact on our community and help our students and our college grow. If pre-COVID-19, there was a lot of event fatigue. Donors were asked to go from event to event. By refocusing most of our initiatives through the Del Mar College Foundation staff, we are increasing the effectiveness of the staff and the trustee time by visiting with donors, finding out what's important to them to support, and making sure we make those matches. We've also looked at revamping any events we do have to focus on the mission of Del Mar College and what we're trying to accomplish here at the college. Next slide, please. So Bernie's Spring Bash, which used to be Bernie's famous crawfish boil, we revisioned it for 2020, which of course we didn't get to do because of COVID. But we went ahead and went virtual. Our net was 70,000, which was a 16% decrease. However, our true net was 55, almost 56,000, which is 33% increase. This is what we look at for an event is how much you raise, that's the gross, how much you raise minus what it costs you to raise that, that's the net. And then the true net is factoring in the amount of time and energy that the staff or volunteers contributed towards making that event successful. So the true net is the better benchmark for how successful a special event is. So we increased the true net by 33% for this virtual Bernie's Spring Bash. And we used all of those funds for emergency needs for students. Next slide. We also had to go virtual for Stringers for Scholarships. The net was actually a 4% increase over 2019. And that was because every single sponsor wanted to continue their sponsorship to help with scholarships. The true net was a 34% increase at $48,000, and this is all for scholarship funding, thanks to those sponsors. Next slide, please. The last event, which by the way, we discontinued in 2020 before we even knew about COVID, was Over the Edge. It was a repelling event. It was fun for 3 years. Lot of media attention on this one. But when we did the analysis, we felt we really needed to use our time differently to help really impact our ability to raise funds for this college and the students. So we cut the event and used the time to focus more on one-on-one donor engagement and stewardship initiatives. And each development officer currently has a portfolio and target engagement criteria, which, by the way, they can do from home. So our timing was extremely auspicious given COVID-19 kicked in March. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Yes, Ms. Averett?
Mary, I have a quick question about the emergency aid fund. I saw that the Bernie's Bash benefited that fund. Can individual donors also give to that fund along with the emergency scholarship fund?
Absolutely. All of these virtual fundraisers were done online, and they were done through our internet access. So we would send emails out to people, and then they could donate online. If they donated through Bernie's Spring Bash, then everything went to the scholarship. So we had stories about students who needed emergency aid. We had videos about students, and we would push those out through YouTube and through texting messages and through the internet, and then drive everyone to the fundraising page online.
Well, I think to clarify my question a little bit, we hear a bit about people who set up scholarships, with annual gifts. Can people do the same to the emergency fund?
Yes, absolutely. When any donor gives online, they can say, this is what I want to support in a text line, and it goes straight to whatever that fund is. So absolutely.
Okay.
Does that
Thank
answer
you.
your question? You bet.
Yes.
Ms. Hutchison?
I just want to say I'll give my testimonial, having worked pretty directly with the foundation for a long time, that especially these numbers, I'm telling you, this is something Mary, you, the foundation, and the college should be extremely proud of. Lots of challenges and some great needs and great results. But I also want to encourage all of the regents, if you get an opportunity to do one of those donor recipient events, grab it. You think graduations are moving. Those are particularly, just to see the depth of the appreciation of those students is just really, really amazing. It's not a fundraiser, but it's a little difficult to leave there without writing a check. It is, you see directly those needs. So click on that link and listen to some of those stories. But the next time that we are not virtual, but in person, go to one of those events.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll add that on as well, Ms. Hutchison. The time that I have attended the donors and their response, I actually had a woman who you all would know who represents a corporation here in town and goes to Charity League and Junior League and every fundraiser you could imagine. And she said this is her favorite event, that donor recipient dinner is her favorite event, because she doesn't almost never gets a chance to look directly in the eye of the individuals who are receiving the support. So she agrees with that wholeheartedly. Thank you, Ms. McQueen. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, and please pass on our thanks to the Foundation Board. It is an independent board of the Board of Regents, and folks who have a variety of connections to Del Mar College, but most importantly are willing to put their name and effort forward to continue to raise money on behalf of Del Mar College and our students. So thank you to the Foundation Board of Trustees as well.
I will share. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, we will now, even though it's only December and we're only just a couple months into our fiscal year, it's now actually time to start talking about our next fiscal year timeline and tuition update. And this is the first of that discussion. I'm going to let Dr. Escamilla open up this discussion with a few comments before turning it over to our CFO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is especially for the new regents. Regents, what occurs this time of the year is, as the chair was saying, that this is the time that we start preparing some of the key factors for next year's budget. And specifically, what we're talking about today is around certainly around the calendar, but it's specifically about tuition and the student charges that we have that we utilize to complete the budget. That does come to the board for official action in February, but today's discussion shapes and formulates our thoughts and procedures, and we hear what you all are saying. There is no action to be taken today, Regents, and but today is an important time to sit and assess where you all are, what are y'all thinking, what are y'all hearing, those kinds of things, and we're going to do the same because we want you all to know how we are keeping our ear to the track and doing all the things to make and keep Del Mar College, keep the quality up where it's always been, and secondarily, and almost as important as the first, as affordable as possible. So that being said, again, today's open discussion is largely around tuition or student charges. And Mr. Raul Garcia, our CFO, is going to lead the conversation. Mr. Garcia?
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. President, members of the board. We are at the initial stages of the budget planning process that begins with today's discussion on the budget calendar and tuition and fee update. Between Jackie and I, we will go over the 4 phases of the budget calendar. We will also go over a few data points that I believe touches on student affordability. And we will close the presentation with factors influencing possible, and I emphasize possible, changes to the college's tuition and fee structure. I will now ask Ms. Landrum to kick off the presentation with the budget calendar on the next slide, please.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Good afternoon, everyone. So for our fiscal year 2022 budget calendar, we are going with the budget approval in August due to COVID-19, since we really don't know what our state appropriations are going to be until probably June or July. However, we are staying with the time frame that we did last year to where we're starting budget earlier. And we're doing that because we want to keep everybody in the routine of doing budgets earlier in the year. So that way, when we get back to normal, then we'll be able to do a June budget approval as we were hoping to do. So the first of the 5 phases of our budget calendar is the planning phase, which is from October through January. And during this phase, our budget calendar is developed, potential changes to our tuition and fees are planned, and our budget training is started. The information gathering phase is in February and includes the development of the budget request at the department level and then a submission to the deans and directors for review. Also during this time, we will be assessing requests for technology, equipment, facility repairs, student recruiting and marketing, and any open or new positions for the next year. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the review and recommendation phase is from March through July. And during this time, our executive team will review their respective budget requests and provide assurance that the financial resources align with the strategic goals and objectives. Budget preliminary revenue assumptions will be made based on the best available information, and the budgets will be adjusted if necessary. So last year is a perfect example of how we had to adjust the budgets during this phase in response to the economic slowdown due to COVID-19. Can we go to the next slide, please? The next phase is our budget approval phase, which is in August. And during this time, our estimated property tax, tuition revenue, and state appropriations will be finalized to the best available information. So at this point, all of the budget requests have been reviewed and are within the revenue constraints for the new budget year. We will have our public hearing on the budget with a board approval as our final outcome. And then the final phase is our property tax approval phase, which is also in August, where we will have our public hearing on the board with the board approval as the final outcome. So the dates for the public hearing they're tentative and may change as we get closer to finalizing the budget. So this concludes the budget calendar for fiscal year 2022. And if you have any questions, we would be happy to answer.
So thank you, Ms. Landrum. Just an FYI, this is still at the initial planning stage. We still have 8 months to figure all this out. So again, this is just a planning document subject to change, pretty much like we did this past March, where we changed everything as a result of the pandemic. So with that said, I'm going to ask you to please move on to the next slide. Okay. So I want to start the presentation with our enrollment information as well as our peers. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board classifies Del Mar College and 7 other colleges that are before you on this slide as a large college. There's a lot of enrollment information on this slide, so I will point out a few items beginning with contact hours. To a certain degree, contact hours is an indicator about the college's financial capacity because it is the basis for determining the college's share of the state appropriations funding. The reported contact hours include spring 2020, summer 2020, and fall 2020 contact hours. This information will be updated in the coming months to include the spring 2020 flex hours. Again, this is just informational, preliminary numbers, but it's a good conversation piece. The college is currently the second largest producer of contact hours relative to our peer group at 4,827,097. I would like to also point out a few more student enrollment data points. Del Mar has the second largest enrollment with a head count of 12,008 for the fall of 2019. 78% of our students are part-time, which is at the high end relative to our peer group. 28% of students are enrolled in technical programs, which is at the midpoint of our peer group. If there are no questions on this slide, I would like to transition to the next slide on student affordability.
I do have a quick question for clarification. On your biennium contact hours where you have Del Mar College at 4,827,097, is that include continuing education contact hours, or is that just the credit contact hours?
You know, I would need to get back with you on that. I'm pretty certain it is the credit contact hours, which is the basis for our formula funding. But let me get back to you with that information. Sorry about that. Any other questions?
I'll just respond. This is my pretty solid guess on that one, that it does include the continuing education contact hours.
Okay. I will certainly get back to confirm that. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to ask you to please advance to the next slide. Okay. Thank you. That's perfect. Yes. So the Association of Governing Boards of the University and Colleges recently article the cost of from this article continue to believe the published cost of attendance is their out-of-pocket cost. What is often misunderstood is the published cost of attendance can be further reduced with need-based aid. In this presentation, we will take a look at both categories, starting with the cost of attendance on this slide. Del Mar College continues to deliver an affordable degree and certificate programs at a cost of attendance of $3,260 for the fall of 2019. This cost is at the midpoint of our peer group, with Amarillo on the low end of the scale at $2,670, and South Plains on the high end at $4,996. Our pricing is also at par with the statewide average cost of attendance of $3,250. Del Mar College also has a history of low tuition and mandatory fee increases. Again, a history of low tuition and mandatory fee increases. From fiscal year 2012 to 2019, the Del Mar student experienced the lowest tuition and mandatory fee increases at an average of $5 per semester credit hour. This average increase is the second lowest within our peer group, with Amarillo's at the low end at $3.50, and North Central Texas at the high end of with $14.29. In addition, our average increases is below the statewide average of $7.03. Lastly, the last point, Del Mar cost of attendance for the first 2 years of a 4-year degree is 60% of the cost to attend our local universities. To sum this up, students who start at Del Mar and successfully transfer to complete their 4-year degree will finance their 4-year degree in a cost-effective manner. Any questions on this slide? Thank you. Please advance to the next slide. Okay. Over 70% of our full-time beginning undergrads receive on an annual basis an average financial aid award of $5,375. This is significantly above the annual cost of tuition that we just talked about in a previous slide, resulting in an average student refund of more than $2,000. The financial aid refund is intended to assist students with other educational costs and living expenses. The last takeaway from this slide is our students borrow less, with an average annual borrowing of $2,987, and they successfully complete their education with the least amount of borrowing at an average of $13,577 relative to our peer group. To sum up these last two slides, Del Mar delivers access to affordable degree and certificate programs, which starts with a reasonable annual cost of attendance that can be further reduced with financial aid. Are there any questions on this slide? Very well. Please advance to the next slide. Del Mar fee structure includes tuition, fee, and 4 different mandatory fees. The table to the right includes the rates for the fall of 2020. The mandatory fee are used to fund specific operating costs. For example, student cultural programs, intramural sports, the student newspaper, and the Viking food pantry are all funded with student fees. The college's technology centers, grounds, and maintenance, campus security, and graduation costs are funded with the general use fee. The tuition fee is used to fund operating activities that are not already funded with the mandatory fees. So to your right, the total cost of attendance for this coming year is $3,320. Actually, this is effective this fall of 2020 for 30 semester hours, which is estimated to be the fall and spring, is a total of $3,320. Do we have any questions on this slide?
Just a comment, Mr. Garcia, just for the newer regents, I just would like to add that, again, full-time for a community college student is 12 hours, okay? And the average student takes somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 hours, depending on how it's sliced. So we're working to increase that number of hours taken per student. That's one of our goals stated by our strategic plan. But the 30 hours is a big number, and a relatively small number of our students take 15 hours or more at a time.
Okay, thank you. Please advance to the next slide. Thank you. So the college's forward value proposition continues to focus on student success in accordance with the college's Aspire, Engage, Achieve strategic plan with continued financial support in parts with student tuition and fees. This past year during the pandemic, the college student success support system came to a greater degree in the form of technology. The college increased technology investments to include cybersecurity, firewall enhancement, laptop purchases for our student loaner program, Wi-Fi access expansions that allowed for parking lot student support services and student access, and an increase in software licensing purchases. The software licensing purchases that I just referred to included Canvas, Panopto, Google Voice, and Microsoft Teams and Office 365 suite licensing agreements. There's also a plan to upgrade our telephony system that will enhance our student customer support services. As a final note on technology, a continued commitment to technology by the college as a tactical business continuity strategy will help minimize future business disruptions that would be similar to what we are experiencing in today's pandemic. The last item on this slide is the college's continued commitment to student affordability, driven in part by steady and modest tuition increase, paired with financial aid. I now bring your attention to the table to the right. As described earlier, the average tuition and mandatory fee increases since fiscal year 2013 has been the lowest relative to our peer group and below the statewide average for all community colleges at $5 per semester contact hour. A $5 increase in semester contact hour rate would generate approximately $790,000 for the college. From a student's perspective, the cost of attendance would increase by $40 for each semester hour based on a student enrollment in eight semester credit hours, which is equivalent to 2 classes with labs, I believe. There's still much more information that needs to be vetted or to be considered before the college makes a recommendation for a change in tuition and mandatory fees. The college will be much more prepared to make a recommendation to the board in the February meeting after vetting all the various components of information leading up to this increase.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
With the increase of cost due to COVID, is the state reimbursing the colleges? Is there any program that is being served at the state level for any reimbursement of costs?
So we were very fortunate to be the recipient of about $4.1 million in the CARES Act funding. Part of that CARES Act funding included $1.9 million in direct student support during this crisis. The other components, that's where we built in a lot of investments in technology to support our students during this crisis. And so in terms of other pass-through dollars from the state, we're very hopeful. Again,
Okay, so are those the monies, is that part of the annual revenue, or is these different numbers? Did you put any of those? Is there a slide to show the differences or how it's being taken care of?
Yeah, so I do have a later on in this presentation, we will go over the grants piece of it, and we will talk about the 4.1 million in CARES Act funding. So that was a very focused conversation there. So I don't have that slide here, but
okay,
point well noted. I'll keep that in mind in our next presentation.
That'd be great to use. Thank you.
Cool.
So, Mr. Garcia, from a timing standpoint, we have to make a decision on tuition and fees no later than what date?
Yeah, so technically I need to have this information in order to have all our college records from a transparency perspective, to have all our records updated. What comes to mind is the student schedule handbook, the student book, those pieces, which I think are reviewed and finalized, and I'm guessing here around the March timeframe. So I technically, I really need to know, in order to deliver adequate student services, it would be ideal to have the tuition rate finalized in the February, March timeframe, so that we can embed that information throughout our various student communications.
So for Dr. Turner and Mr. Garza's benefit, that's part of the difficulty in this discussion, and one reason why we start it in December, so we can think about it and let staff begin to chew on what their options are going to be. We have to make this decision. We don't find out what the state appropriations are going to be until June timeframe, and we don't find out what our ad valorem tax values are going to be until late July. So this becomes a sequential decision in which we have to make this decision first, and do it as conservatively as we can, but understanding that we may not know the full financial situation of the college again until June, July timeframe. So just to give you a heads up, it's never a perfect scenario in which we can look at all three major legs of our financial stool at one time. So it's just the way of the budget cycle. I'll let Dr. Escamilla add on some comments.
A bit more history, Regents. You can recall the days when years prior, where the board, and I remember I got together with the board, then the Board of Regents, and said, let's hold tuition all together. And what that does is, when you have a zero increase, is just that the need accumulates. And so if you don't tap the wheel slightly every year, then what happens is, if you do what we did for, I think, at least a couple of years, maybe 3, I think it was 2, and not increase, we had that lag, and then the need hit on a different class. And what happened was that particular class of, when I say class of students, that particular students took on a bigger increase when the need arose, and it impacted those students inordinately as compared to the previous 2 years. And so, we've gone through that, and in the history, and I'm just reflecting now, the history has been, and the conversation has been, to keep a steady, as small an increase as possible, as steady an increase as possible for the foreseeable future. So I just want to remind everybody of those times where we did go back and held off completely, and kind of that recoil effect that occurred as a result. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excuse me, any other questions or comments from Mr. Garcia? Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, thank you.
We will now move on to our next staff report, which was an interim status report on grant management audit. Dr. Escamilla, do you have an introductory comments?
We can move right into this one.
Mr. Garcia.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Today's presentation is an update to the Weaver Internal Audit Report regarding the administration and operations of the Grant-Sponsored Research Office. Over the course of about a year, the GSRO has been working on institutionalizing corrective action plans to address the Weaver audit findings paired with a holistic view of the college's grant management system. Before we go over the audit findings, Dr. Larry Lee and I will kick off the presentation with some background on the GSRO. GSRO is organized to support the college's strategic vision with alternative sources of funding and to support the principal investigators who manage the grants. The organization of the unit includes a newly created grant director position that I'm excited to introduce, Christina Gonzalez, as the grant director.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. I'm grateful for this opportunity and look forward to continue serving the grant community in this new role.
Thank you. So she is someone who has quickly grown up the ranks of the college. Under her leadership, she will manage the college grant portfolio, monitor grant compliance requirements, support the strategic plan of the college, manage grant-related training, and design grant operating activities to ensure projects run smoothly and efficiently. She will also act as a liaison to the external and internal auditors on grant-related items. I was also very fortunate to come across paths with Dr. Larry Lee, who for several months has been a tremendous help with addressing the audit findings and other tactical grant initiatives. Dr. Lee, can you please provide some tidbits on the GSRO?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Dr. Escamilla, and members of the board. And as the Chief Financial Officer has stated, GSRO is a resource for faculty and staff regarding external grants. We help to identify appropriate funding opportunities such as local, state, federal, or corporate to support instructional programs and services. We facilitate the development and submission of proposals by principal investigators and project directors. We assist principal investigators and project directors to implement and manage their projects according to agency metrics and requirements, as well as appropriate state and federal guidelines. We coordinate all aspects of grant reporting, both financial and programmatic, to granting agencies. We maintain a database to track and document critical aspects of each grant. Finally, we are a training resource on grant-related topics.
Thank you, Dr. Larry Lee. A few takeaways from the graph on this slide. The college has received a total of $45.9 million in alternative grant funding from fiscal year 2016 to 2020. The source of funding varies from federal, state, local agencies, and the foundation. The one headliner on this graph is the $7.2 million increase in new grant funding from 2009 to 2020. This is attributed in part to the CARES Act funding of $4.1 million and the SENDA grant for $2.9 million. This is thanks to the hard work of Dr. Rito Silva, Dr. Christina Wilson, and Dr. Jonda Halcom, and team who has successfully secured and or administered these grants. I will also add that we are on track for another successful grant year in 2020. Dr. Silva continues to build on his record of accomplishments with another big win for the college by securing the TRIO federal grant award valued at $1.3 million. With that said, GSRO is prepared to support any new grant initiatives. The last point on this slide of this slide is the size of the college's grant portfolio will vary year over year due to various factors, including a national health or economic crisis and the grants agency's financial capacity. For example, the federal response to the pandemic and economic slowdown are the underpinnings of the 2021 CARES Act funding, whereby the college received $4.1 million in funding. The college continues to monitor federal activity to identify possible renewed funding. The TWC Skills Grant Program is another example, where the grant peaked in 2016 at $2.3 million in response to the local economic expansion. The college delivered multiple employee skills training programs to local companies and grant awards ranging from $100,000 to $1.4 million. OxyChem received the $1.4 million in skills training in the 2016 year. The college continues to deliver skills training under the TWC grant program with grant awards ranging from $20,000 to $300,000 in fiscal year 2020 and through fiscal year 2020. I will now ask Dr. Lee to begin the conversation on the corrective action of the Weaver audit findings, if there are no questions on this slide.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Before we go into the specifics of the Weaver report, I would like to summarize our overall response to the finding as follows. First, Del Mar College has now provided GSRO the human capital for it to deliver the necessary services and support functions at the level that the college community deserves. GSRO is strengthening its grant monitoring by documenting overarching processes and with appropriate flow charts and policy and procedure manuals to clarify and enhance control over critical processes. Finally, GSRO is making this documentation ready and available to those who want to pursue a grant or for those who need it for grant oversight. Any questions? Audit finding number 1 reported the need for an optimum structure for grant management and an overarching document to coordinate the various grant management processes. 2009 saw the GSRO staff severely reduced due to the budget crisis caused by the Great Recession that impacted education statewide. The restructuring of the 4-person office resulted in the loss of its director, the administrative assistant, and with its grant accountant reassigned to the business services office. The Office of Development retained the pre-award grant specialist and later added a grant writer to GSRO. In response to Weaver's recommendation for an optimum structure and greater oversight of administrative processes, specifically financial and programmatic reporting, GSRO was reassigned to business services from the Office of Development in 2019. GSRO handles programmatic and student support services grant, where funding comes from federal or state agencies, whereas the Office of Development handles grants with funding primarily for local foundations, corporate entities, or individuals to provide scholarships. In 2019, GSRO consisted of 1 full-time and 1 part-time employees. At the end of 2020, GSRO now has a director, a grant accounting manager, and a grant accounting assistant. This structure reflects the Chief Financial Officer's added focus on accountability and compliance. As for the status of an overarching document for grant processes and management, the following basic documents are now in place. First, the Grant Starter Kit for awards and contracts was developed to give the prospective investigator director a primer. This document provides a broad overview of grant nomenclature, key procedures, guidelines, and expectation of working on a grant. Second, the existing Business Office Policy and Procedures Manual, specifically Chapter 8, Grant Accounting, received an update. This document provides specific grant account activation, management procedures, review requirements, and reporting procedures in detail for the control and proper use of public funds. Both of these documents were reviewed during the recent SACS COC off-site review and met the 13.5 Control of Sponsored Research External Fund standard. The Grants Development Handbook is the overarching document, GSRO's standard operating procedure, and is currently in final draft. Its purpose is to centralize and enhance clarity of processes, as well as to establish responsibilities for both grant personnel and administration in all phases of the grant cycle. Are there any questions? Okay. Finding number 2, identify the need to develop and disseminate grant management training to project members on federal and state technical issues. GSRO is tasked and now has the personnel to provide grant orientation training to new investigators and directors. Upon receiving a federal or state grant, such as a National Science Foundation, Department of Labor, Department of Education, the coordinating board, investigators and directors, as well as project members, are either required or encouraged to participate in relevant workshops, webinars, or annual conferences conducted by the granting agency. In these sessions, financial reporting, evaluation, outcome measures, and award management information is presented and discussed. If an investigator or director has a technical issue with a grant, the GSRO director is responsible for communicating with the program officer to resolve those issues. Any questions?
Finding number 3 reveals that not all grants follow the routing approval procedures per policy and that this requirement needs broader dissemination and enforcement during the grant approval and application process. The Grants Development Handbook goes into detail on the grant approval process with the use of 3 forms outlined in its pre-award processes chapter. First, a go-no-go decision matrix is used to help a potential investigator, director, determine if a grant project is feasible by asking specific resource and capacity questions. Second, if it is determined to be a go, then the grant proposal concept form is generated and routed through the administrative chain. This gives management its first look at a possible grant project. If approved, then the writing and budgeting by the investigator director begins. Third, the grants proposal submission form accompanies the completed proposal through the administrative chain for final review and approval prior to submission. This process is flowcharted for clarity in the SOP. This review process is currently being automated using Adobe Sign to automate the proposal routing, review, and signature approval process, as well as to improve tracking while eliminating errors and increasing auditability. Are there any questions on this slide? In audit finding number 4, Weaver recommends that the college communicates the salient operational and financial responsibilities of the grant contract to the various college stakeholders. This includes use of funds, individual responsibilities, contractual requirements, financial reporting, and closeout functions. As presented in the previous findings, relevant documents have been developed to communicate this information. To further expedite and encourage the use of these resources, I have created a website to provide easy access by all grant stakeholders on grant opportunities and the information needed to develop a grant. The funding opportunities link directs the faculty and staff members to various state and federal websites where grant opportunities can be explored. The pre-award button links to the grant routing forms necessary to complete the pre-award steps discussed in finding number 3. The post-award button links to the financial manual and handbooks referenced in finding number 1. It also provides access to other information such as use of P-cards, travel, and purchasing. The compliance button links to the various federal and state agencies where the compliance resources are found, such as OMB's uniform guidance. Finally, audit findings number 5 and 6 are addressed together as they stem from the same root cause. Both findings state that some financial or programmatic reports are being prepared and submitted to the grantor agency without executive management review or approval. Chapter 8 of the Business Office Policies and Procedures Manual, Grant Accounting, clearly defines in great detail the financial monitoring process, as well as their periodic report preparation by the grant accountant with a closeout financial report routed through the college's certification authority hierarchy with timely submission to the grant agency. The Grants Development Handbook in the chapter Post-Award Processes and its Post-Award Roles and Responsibilities matrix were developed to promote institutional monitoring and awareness of project findings by appropriate college management at all levels. This process is clearly described in the SOP's narrative and checklist with checklists and flowcharts. The principal investigator or project director is typically the accountable programmatic reporting representative to the grantor for the institution. To provide administrative awareness of the project findings and external evaluations for a specific project, our investigators are now required to provide courtesy copies to its administrative chain and the appropriate executive team member for review. The GSRO director is tasked with monitoring this process. Are there any questions? So the Weaver internal audit has allowed GSRO to look carefully at its business process and documentation to improve accountability and grant compliance. The audit process has been instructive by getting an outsider's perspective on our internal controls to help us find better ways of doing things. We have made significant progress with our corrective actions. However, we recognize and acknowledge that our efforts are not yet fully complete. We look forward to the Weaver audit in early 2021 for their insight and recommendations on our progress within GSRO. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive report. Mr. Garcia, do you have wrap-up comments?
Yes, no, I want to thank Dr. Larry Lee and Christina for this well put together presentation. As you can see, it was a very thought out, methodical process where we bridged employee resources, technology, and put the information for easy access to continue to improve our business practice.
Thank you very much. Any questions or follow-up comments from any regents? I'll echo the compliments for the most thorough work. Thank you very much, Larry and Christina, for your work on this. Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you.
So now moving on, we have our the report on our annual security and safety report as required by the Clery Act. Ms. White, would you give a little bit of background in this as you prepare to give us the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. In 1990, Congress enacted the Crime Awareness and Campus Security Act, which amended the Higher Education Act of 1965. The act required all post-secondary institutions participating in HEA's Title IV Student Financial Assistance Programs to disclose campus crime statistics and security information. It is known as the Jean Clery Disclosure Act and is found in Section 485F of the HEA. Then, in March of 2013, the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, known as VAWA, was signed into law. VAWA included amendments to the Clery Act and how we report some of our crime statistics. The statistical data found starting on page 19 of the report that was included in your board packet shows the crime information for a 3-year time period of 2017, 2018, and 2019. A little bit about Clery and geography is that there are 3 basic areas: the campus, non-campus property, and public property. The campus is obviously within the boundaries of the campus. Non-campus property is buildings or property the college owns or controls, for example, the Northwest Center or the aviation hangar at the International Airport. And then public property is any public property within or immediately adjacent to the campus. This includes the streets and the sidewalks across the street from the campus. This can be seen in our statistical report under each area. Please note that the majority of crimes that you see in the statistical information do not involve our students, faculty, or staff. The Department of Education also made changes to Title IX, as was previously discussed, policy requirements that required the institution or require institutions of higher education to change sexual violence to sexual misconduct. The requirement to be in compliance with the Clery Act is publication of the college's policy. Del Mar College's new policy has been updated and is in this report starting on page 28. Lastly, the report also covers information on timely warnings and emergency notification. It also addresses victims' rights, their options, and resources available to victims. Finally, I would like to thank the Clery Compliance Committee members, say that 3 times fast, I guess, for their help in putting together the annual report. I want to recognize College Relations, in particular Ralph Goonan and Rosalinda Reynosa, for their expertise and assistance. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for not introducing you earlier. Ms. White is our Director of Security for Del Mar College. That's for Mr. Garza's and Dr. Turner's benefit. Any questions for Ms. White? Thank you very much for this presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And then our last staff report for the day involves our annual review of professional services contracts. And Ms. Tammy McDonald will review that for us.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. About twice a year, we bring this list to you of our professional service contracts. And I think I've been doing this for a couple of years now to kind of make it simpler to look at the different items. Is if there's something highlighted in yellow, then it is going to be expiring during the year, like it would be calendar year. If it's highlighted in an orange color, it has expired during this calendar year. If there's something that's highlighted in a blue shade, then there was some type of date revision to that particular contract. So we started doing this instead of trying to go line by line to look at maybe what has changed. We can look at the color-coded system. So if you have any particular questions on any particular contract, we do have quite a few that are highlighted in the orange shade that have expired or will be expiring pretty much at the end of this month. And most of them have to do with our work from our 2014 bond, because a lot of those projects have ended, or they did end about a year ago. So some of those contracts were completion plus a year. So most of the activity that you see that is expiring in the orange shaded color does have to do with a lot of the 2014 bond projects that have completed. We did have a couple of date revisions, and we do have some contracts in yellow that will be expiring at the end of this month in December. So I'll entertain any specific questions. If I cannot answer them, then I do have the exec team members on standby that are basically what we call our contract owner or representative to answer those for you.
So it's not a question necessarily about your report, but this draws to my attention the construction projects on both East and West Campus that are finishing and technically open, but haven't been used as designed since March. And so is there any concern? Is there, once they are begin to be used again by students and wear and tear, are there any concerns about warranty kinds of issues associated with that? So again, it's not a question about your report. It's more, it just brought up to me that we've got buildings sitting out there that have been in pristine shape since March because they're not getting used.
Slightly used, gently used for sure. John Strybos is on the call. Can you bring us up to speed, John? New Regents. John Strybos is our Vice President for Facilities and an engineer, staff engineer.
So we've completed, so part of it ties into the official date, the architectural and the legal dates of substantial completion. And those were in December of 2019. So we're right at 1 year, literally this month on those, as well as that several of those vendors, the architects who did that work are in the new solicitation and were awarded at the September board that Turner Ramirez, Jignat. So several of them will continue, and the others, if they're not, then we have reached the limit of their warranty services that are required.
Is this concern that I brought up valid in your point, or do you think we're going to be fine? Help me out here.
I believe we'll be fine based on where we are and the inspections that we've had on these buildings. And although they've been, as you've stated, lightly used from a classroom perspective, we continue to have faculty and staff in these in the buildings on a limited basis. Facilities been checking them out. We're running the air conditioning. We're testing the buildings. We continue to have issues with GAMI building warranty issues that we keep getting addressed. So the architects have been directly involved in this. And at least at this point, I do not see any issues with these contracts that are expiring, but it's because we have new contracts in place.
All righty, thank you. Other questions or comments from Regents? All right, seeing none, thank you, Ms. McDonald, for this.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is to look at our pending business list. It's on page 159 of the packet, covering several things today in our December meeting, and you will see that we do not have planned the January meeting, so we will have our continued board policy review in February. This process has taken us a little bit of time, but we had a pretty good workshop on it in October, November. I've slept since then. But we'll have a follow-up from Weaver with specific items as part of that continued board policy review workshop. We'll have a spring enrollment update, our financial and investment reports, a report on tax collections from the tax assessor collector, and have a decision point on our tuition at that February meeting. We'll also do our annual ethics training and update that Mr. Rivera will provide for us. And I missed legislative update in there as well. Any questions or anything for February? Then you've got into spring, additional workshops and board items. Dr. Escamilla and I will do some board planning for the next year and look at spreading out some of those additional activities as well. Any questions or concerned on our pending items list? Anything else I need to bring up, Dr. Escamilla?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. Okay, with that, we will move on to our consent agenda. These are items of a routine nature. Approval of minutes from October 13th, acceptance of investments for November of 20, and financials for October of 20. Are there any of those items that need to be pulled for separate consideration? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve those items as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms.
I'll
Averitt.
second.
Thank you, Dr. Adami. I'm going to ask everyone to turn on your cameras if we can adopt the consent agenda items by raising your hand. Thank you. Any opposed, raise your hand. That motion passes. Thank you very much. Our regular agenda item starts with the presentation of our 2019 annual audit. Any introductory remarks, Dr. Escamilla?
We need to move along with time, and Bridget Cook is here to join us, so we can jump right in with Mr. Garcia.
Great, Mr. Garcia. I'm sorry, Dr. Turner, you have your mic open. Did you have a question?
No, sorry.
That's quite all right. I'm trained. I see a green mic, and I'm ready to call on somebody. So, Mr. Garcia, please introduce our auditors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to first thank Ms. Cook, Mr. John Johnson, and Dr. Kathy West and the business office for making it another successful audit year, more so than in previous year due to the constraints driven by the current extraordinary circumstances of the pandemic. Let me begin with definition of an unmodified opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that an independent auditor can issue in an audit. We have today Ms. Bridget Cook from Collier, Johnson & Woods, who will present the college comprehensive annual financial report and the opinions issued on the basic financial statements and our compliance in all material respects with the requirements of the federal and state programs that could have a material effect on the program itself. Ms. Cooks, can you please begin your presentation?
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This year, as Mr. Garcia had mentioned, it was a good but difficult year as we're learning how to do virtual audits. I think it's probably preferred by the staff as opposed to in-your-face audits. But that being said, there were some things that, for the most part, I sent a letter to you yesterday regarding the board, the information that the board is required to hear from me. And the only thing I want to point out on that letter was the difficulties encountered in performing the audit. Although there were some adjustments that needed to be made having done a virtual audit, I think there was no significant dealing with management. I just want to point that out. And the management and our firm, Collier, Johnson & Woods, were able to adapt to the new electronic work environment that was the result of the pandemic. So it means things like, instead of being on site, we were provided with laptop computers with access to the specific areas that we needed to do for testing. But one of the things that was difficult was in regard to the compliance testing. As you've heard throughout the day, there was several grants that were given under the CARES Act. And what's happening to our profession is that the guidance relating to how to audit those procedures, how to audit those grants has been changing over time. And there's normally during our audits, for the grants, there's the OMB issues a compliance supplement that outlines the procedures that we're required to test. And in August, when they issued that, they said there would be an addendum to tell us how to test the CARES Act audits. And that addendum has not come out yet. So with that in mind, we went to the next step of what we're required to do, which includes it's a specific supplement of what we're supposed to do for when there is not guidance on a specific audit program. And for the most part, the grants that you did, I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to Christina Gonzalez, the grant specialist, the director, who worked with my counterpart, Lachey Kuykendall, to determine what needed to be done in the circumstances that we're facing, where the guidance is not out there yet. I was able to, however, we felt like based on our research and our correspondence through the AICPA and other institutions, be able to express an opinion on those grants, which do hit the threshold for us to be required to audit those as major programs. Since the CARES Act received for the current fiscal year was about $2.1 million, as shown in the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So with that being said, I'm going to go on to my normal presentation. And so if you could go to the next page. The overview of the financial statements is there's several components. The basic financial statements, which includes the statement of net position, the statement of revenues and expenses, and changes in net position, and the notes to the financial statement, is what we express our unmodified opinion on, keeping in mind that that's basically the statement of net position is the balance sheet if you were a business, and the changes in net position would be your income statement. That additionally, there's required supplemental information, which we do perform some procedures on, but do not express an opinion on, which includes the MD&A, which is the narrative financial presentation at the beginning of the CAFR, and also the schedules of the college's share of net pension and OPEB liabilities. And then additional information is also required by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And those also we do express an opinion on the schedules A through D, which is the breakouts required by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And we can go to the next page. So you can find that opinion on pages 17 through 19 of the CAFR. And moving to the next page. The required schedules by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board basically follow GAP, and one of the requirements of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is that the as well as GASB is that you present the report in a business type activity. So they're looking at the college as a business type activity. And this is one of the things that for some of the new board members that's confusing sometimes, because the college actually keeps their records on the fund basis, but once a year we convert for the CAFR to the business type model. And so it's showing you like a balance sheet and income statement, which is a good way to take a snapshot and look at the picture of the actual financial results from one point to the other. So that being your fiscal year ended August 31st, 2020. So the next page. As far as your statement of net position, which is found on page 41 of the CAFR, or if you're following along in the board packet, that's PDF page 235. The statement of net position is showing your balance sheet in comparison to the prior year. And in comparison to the prior year, your overall total assets and deferred outflows increased by 98 million. And to give you just a summary of the highlights, current assets are increased by 10 million, and that's primarily due to short-term investments that, as you know, this year we issued some bonds. The college issued some bonds, about $78 million in bonds. And so there's more cash, as well as some of that cash is still retained in short-term investments. The rest is in longer-term investments. And that's the reason that there's an increase on that part of your balance sheet. And then in addition to that, your capital assets have increased by $40 million, which is all the ongoing construction projects that were completed during the year. And then there's my favorite, and I know Mr. Bennett's favorite too. When I say OPEBs, that's other post-employment benefits, which is basically health insurance. And so deferred outflows is a actuary type number that is calculated each year, and it's decreased this year by 1.7 million. And I want to kind of look at those deferred outflows because they are somewhat confusing, as together with the other pensions and OPEB accounts that are on the balance sheet. So if you could move forward to the next slide. This is, I'm trying not to get too technical for you, but basically you're part of a group through TRS and also ERS as for your pensions. And so a few years back, some of you will remember that we had to adjust to bring the liability related to those pensions onto your balance sheet. So if you look at the very top, we're talking about your pensions. These three accounts are included on your balance sheet related to the pensions. So right there in the middle of that first block, you'll see where it says net pension liability is 20,571,896. And that is a slight decrease. So every year, TRS has an actuary report, which is basically done as of a measurement date of last year. And those numbers can change based on market differences as well as other, as rate changes for investments. And so that's not too bad as far as a change in the estimate. And then you're making payments throughout you and all the other institutions, including school districts and higher education. And so the overall net of those things, because deferred outflows is a debit balance, is the change overall is an increase in your liability related to pensions of 2,169,410. And then the same thing for the OPEBs. Now the OPEBs came out about 3 years ago, and they're still having some adjustments to them. But the same thing is the deferred outflows and the deferred inflows, since those are amortized over a 10-year period, they don't affect the actual liability as much. But as you can see, the OPEB liability did go up by $4.5 million for the current year. So it gives you a net decrease, though, because the offset is through your deferred inflows of $4,925,000. So if you look at those two together, and one increases your liabilities and one decreases your liabilities, it's not a huge effect compared to prior years. And the reason I mention this is that sometimes when you look at the CAFR for the first time, you notice that there's a deficit in your unrestricted net positions, which is your equity. And the reason for that is because of the bringing on of the pensions and the OPEB liabilities to your balance sheet. Moving on to the next page. I'm so happy that I don't think I lost anybody yet. Usually when I bring up that part about the pensions and the OPEBs, I know it does get a little detailed. But let's take a big picture on your liabilities, and really the main story is your liabilities increased, and the reason they increased was because you issued bonds. So with an increase of 81 million, 78 million of that is bonds. And that's offset by some payments on the bonds you held before, as well as, some of these other items that went up and down. And the next slide. Operating revenue decreased by $1.1 million. Your overall net positions increased by 7.1 million. That's your net income. So the main reason for that decrease is the 1.1 million. There's a slight increase in tuition, but it's offset by some of the increase in Pell Grants or scholarships. So on your operating revenues, those are shown on the financial statements as net of the scholarships and grants. Then the other reason is that because of the circumstances related to COVID-19 and the forced closure of most of the campuses, your auxiliary services sustained losses of 596. So you no longer had cafeterias and other areas that you made cash from students being on campus. And the next page. On the next page, can you move? Operating expenses increased by $10 million, and most of that, of course, is salaries and benefits. The salary expense increased by 3.7 million, and the related benefits, of course, increased by 1.4 million. The other big area is other costs related to non-capitalizable, basically furnishing that were not capitalized for the new buildings, such as equipment and instructional supplies. And then next page. So overall, in addition to the previously I was speaking to you about the operating revenues minus the operating expenses. The next category is your non-operating revenues, which increased by $7.6 million. You can see from the graph, it's a little bit of your state tax going up. And if we could move to the next slide. It's showing you that your state appropriations increased by $2.1 million due to larger enrollment pre-COVID. And then also ad valorem taxes increased mostly due to the increases in property values. And there was a slight increase, I think 0.75 of a rate increase last year for your tax rates. And then federal revenue increased by $3.5 million, primarily due to COVID funding. Some of that was Pell Grants as well. Additional Pell Grants were given to the college this year. But also, and I know you heard the number earlier by Mr. Garcia about the COVID funding. Well, some of that funding was received in last fiscal year, and some of it's being received in the fall. So there is some of that coming to the next period. So it's just a matter of cutoff for the year end. But the COVID funding of 2.1 million. And then the next slide. So lastly, the other area that we issue an opinion on. So there's 2 additional auditor reports. Is in regard to the federal and state awards, as well as an internal control over financial reporting. So as part of our standards under GAO, we issue separate reports that are included in the financial statements related to one to the internal control over financial reporting, and one to the compliance and other matters. And I'm happy to tell you, if you move forward the slide, that we didn't identify any deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting that we would consider to be material weaknesses. Additionally, the results of our tests disclose no instances of noncompliance or other matters related to the grant required to be reported to you under GAS. This being said, you may have noticed that my audit reports are actually drafts in the financial statement, and this is because we are one of the difficulties we had during the audit was getting responses from confirmations and debt people, as well as just because they're shut down, and so all their employees are working at home, and we've had to do a lot more work as far as following up on that, as well as trying to determine what specific standards we had to follow in lieu of the guidance for the CARES Act grants. So that being said, we think we're going to finish up. I'm still wrapping up my file and making sure I got all of those things included. And so we're hoping to get this done by the end of the week. But the numbers are complete, I believe. And unless something comes up in the wrap up, which we would inform you about, I think everything is complete. And the other comment I wanted to talk to you about, next slide. Okay. Oh, we can go forward one more. I just wanted to say at this point, there's no management letter. A management letter would be required if we found a material weakness or significant deficiency. The audit report, as in years past, has been submitted to the GFOA, and you did receive the GFOA certificate, which is a certificate in excellence in financial reporting that that the college has received for many years now, actually, and you did receive it for last year's, so that the fiscal year 2019 and the fiscal year 2020 will be submitted, and we expect to receive that back. And the way that process works is they have people who are experienced people within the accounting profession and government as well that actually review the report from cover to cover and give us a few comments if they find something they think can be improved, and then determine whether or not it's achieved the certificate. And so it's actually a very good way to support the continuous improvements efforts of making the college's financial statements presentation thorough, as well as in compliance with the various accounting standards. And I just really want to say thanks to management, to Raul Garcia, to John Johnson, to Kathy West, to Christina Gonzalez, to Jackie, to all the people that participated in the audit. There was a lot of work done, and it went really very, very smoothly, considering this incredibly different time and with our with all the COVID things and the restrictions. And so we're very happy to be here. So thank you.
Yes. So sure. Thank you, Ms. Cook. I appreciate for that thorough presentation. And so I hope this has lifted everybody's holiday spirits, Christmas spirits, all this wonderful news coming out of this report. I know I'm going to have myself a little eggnog later on today, spice it up a little bit. But that concludes our presentations if there's any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia, and thank you, Ms. Cook. Are there questions or comments from board members? The thorough presentation as always. Bridget, thank you so much for the work that you did, and I'll echo your compliments of our staff. Audits are hard enough, but to do them virtually, I just applaud all of your efforts and thank our staff for being so accommodated. Kudos to Dr. Escamilla and Mr. Garcia and the entire staff.
Thank you.
We do need to take action, because this is still in draft form. Mr. Garcia, if you can come back on the line, come back on the screen, tell me what action we need.
Yes, I would recommend moving forward to accept the report as it stands today. Just listening to Ms. Cook and the thorough job that her and her team have done, I do not anticipate any changes. I think it's just going through the report once more and just trying to cross all the T's and dot all the I's. But for the most part, the opinions are going to stay the same, is my guess, unless Bridget says otherwise. But if anything, we could always come back to the board in February if there's any changes. But overall, I think we're at 99.9% done, and the opinions are pretty solid, in my opinion.
I would also like to say that it's required to be submitted to the coordinating board December 31st.
Thank you, Ms. Bridget. I appreciate that. That's right. So we're also under a time commitment here where we need to submit the report to the Higher Education Community Board. Is that correct, Ms. Bridget?
Coordinating board. Okay.
That is due in December, and so we're trying to meet that deadline as well.
Okay, so then we will, I'll look for a motion to adopt the 2019 annual audit and comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ended August 31st, 2020 and 2019, and ask Dr. Escamilla to bring back if there are any adjustments based on these last few days of follow-up, to please report that to us at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Is there a motion in that regard? I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, you're open, but we can't hear you. I'm sorry. I see your mic open, but we don't have any audio. Ms. Hutchison, your mic is open.
I will make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Thank you, Dr. Adami. Mr. Bennett? Now I think you're frozen. I want to give Mr. Bennett an opportunity to ask a question or to make his comment, but it appears as if he has logged off. So we're going to wait just a minute. I bet he's going to log back on, so we can wait just a moment for him to log back on. I would ask Mr. Garcia for his eggnog recipe, but I don't think we want to share that.
Yes. Well, while we're on pause here, I want to share my holiday tie.
Oh, there we go. Mr. Bennett.
So I have a snowman here.
Okay.
And it says, he's carrying a sign that says, "Let it snow."
Got it.
Let it snow in Corpus.
Okay, Mr. Bennett, are you back?
Sorry.
No, sir, you're not. I'm going to try one more time, Mr. Bennett. Maybe turn off your camera and see if that helps. All right. I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion, and we can come back if Mr. Bennett has a question. We can come back to that in a moment. So we have a motion and a second to adopt the annual audit and the CAFR. All those in favor of adoption of that motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. That motion passes unanimously, and we will come back to Mr. Bennett if he has questions when he comes back on the line. Thank you again, Mr. Garcia, and thank you, Ms. Cook. Next item on our agenda is a discussion and possible action related to the purchase and removal and replacement of 5 fire hydrants on our west campus. our Vice President for Facilities, Mr. John Strabos.
Regents, that you saw earlier, the report on the Fire Training Academy, they use fire hydrants as part of their training. These are not part of the fire protection system for the buildings themselves. These fire hydrants have basically reached the end of their useful life. We've worked with vendors to get quotes. We have 2 quotes. We've got several vendors who basically refuse to quote it because of the specialized scope of the work. We're recommending award of this for the quote to Clark Pipeline Services, LLC, in the amount of $43,183,046 and 10% contingency of $4,319. And we're recommending the funding source be 2014 bond unallocated interest income.
Thank you, Mr. Strybos. Are there any questions for Mr. Strybos? Is there a motion to approve the purchase, removal, and replacement of the 5 fire hydrants on the West Campus?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Adami. Is there a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
Second by Ms. Hutchison. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is, thank you, Mr. Strybos. Next is discussion and possible action related to internal audit services. We had an RFQ that went out, and a process Ms. McDonald is going to review for us, and a recommendation for approval.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The college issued an RFQ on October 12th of 2020 asking for a specific internal audit services. Our current internal audit services provided by Weaver Tidwell will expire February the 28th of 2021. 4 firms submitted statements of qualifications. The evaluation committee agreed to interview the following firms: Moss Adams, Baker Tilly, Weaver, and Tidwell. The evaluation committee members included Mr. Ed Bennett, Del Mar College Regent, Mr. Raul Garcia, Vice President and CFO, John Johnson, Controller and Revenue Budget Administrator, and myself. The firms were interviewed on Wednesday, November the 18th. The evaluation committee is asking the board to take action and for internal audit services and to authorize the administration to proceed with contract negotiations, and the committee is recommending Weaver Tidwell.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Mr. Bennett, I saw that you came on the line. Do you have comments serving as our regent on that selection committee? We still can't hear you. I am... Any questions?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, interesting. Yes, I have some comments about the procedure. We had 3 excellent firms that we evaluated. I was real impressed with them. They each had different areas of expertise. I really felt comfortable with all 3 of them, but I'm real happy to recommend the same ones that we've been using.
There we go. Not sure what that was. Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate you serving on that selection committee, and we appreciate your comments. Any other questions? Mr. Bennett, would you like to make the motion to adopt the recommendation from the selection committee?
I would. I'd like to recommend that we use Weaver for the contract, to negotiate the contract with.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Averett. Any other questions for Ms. McDonald? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of the motion to negotiate the contract with Weaver and Tidwell, please raise your hand. Any opposed, raise your hand. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And again, thank you, Mr. Bennett, for serving on that committee. Next, we have an item. This is going to become an annual item on our agenda every December to look at possible action related to an annexation order under the Texas Education Code. Mr. Augie Rivera, our General Counsel, is going to review that item for us.
Thank you, Regent Scott. Good afternoon. Regents, there are several ways that the Del Mar College District can expand its territory by annexation. One of them is an automatic method whereby under Texas Education Code Section 130.066, the college can adopt an order annexing any property that the city of Corpus Christi annexes at any time. That's because the entirety of the boundaries of the city of Corpus Christi are within Del Mar College's district, and so by statute, the college is allowed the right to automatically annex any property they annex. For those of you that were on the board last March, you'll remember doing that. You entered an order back in March, basically adopting or annexing any territory that the city of Corpus Christi had annexed that was not already within the college's territory as of January 1, 2020. As Regent Scott mentioned, we're implementing a practice today whereby in December, we're going to go down our checklist and you will either be presented with an order asking you to adopt property that the city has annexed in the prior year, or you'll be getting a notification that the city has not annexed any new property and there's no need to do anything. But one way or another, we're going to acknowledge this process in December going forward every year. I will tell you that we had been under the impression from speaking with the appraisal district that there had been some additional property added since your last order. That's why this this memo and the proposed order went into your board packets. Since then, we have confirmed that no, in fact, the city of Corpus Christi has not adopted or annexed rather any additional property in 2020. You'll remember there was quite a bit of activity, and Regent Gaddis, I know, can attest to this as well. There was a lot of annexation activity last year and disannexation activity. So that's where the confusion came in. So the good news is you don't have to do anything today because there's no new property or territory to annex. And so this is really just a notification to you of that fact. And also, again, just we're putting a place mark here. Going forward, we'll do this on an annual basis. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Regent Scott.
Thank you. So prior to taking on our next item, we actually are going to go into closed session because there's a little bit of information related to agenda item 8 that we need to discuss in closed session. So if you'll allow me to read this language, and then we'll take a brief break while we clear the room virtually and otherwise. So the Del Mar Board will enter into closed session under Texas Government Code 551.071 regarding pending or contemplated litigation or legal claims or a settlement offer with possible discussion and action in open session, and the seeking of legal advice from counsel with possible discussion and action in open session. And under Texas Government Code 551.073 regarding a prospective gift or donation with possible discussion and action in open session. The time is 3:28 p.m. We will reconvene in 7 minutes, allowing everyone to take a brief break. Thank you so much. Regents, we have come back from closed session at 4:02 p.m. and we're going to continue with our agenda on item number 8, discussion and possible action related to a proposed naming for a gift of significance. Ms. Mary McQueen, do you have a brief public presentation?
All right. Yes, the Board of Regents decided to revamp their naming policy in May 2019, which allows us to talk to donors who give gifts of significance and give them an opportunity to have a naming positioning at one of the facilities. We currently have a donor family that would like to give $1 million to Del Mar College, and we are recommending that we give them recognition on the Southside campus. In the Culinary Arts building, there are 2 rooms that are multi-purpose rooms that can also be used for community rooms, and we are recommending naming those rooms in recognition of this significant gift to Del Mar College and Del Mar College Foundation.
Thank you very much, Ms. McQueen. So as staff is recommending, I'm looking for a motion to authorize the college and foundation to enter into a naming agreement with a donor for stipulated location on the South Campus as discussed in closed session. Is there someone who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
Dr. Adami, thank you very much. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett, for that second. Are there any other questions or discussion items related to this? Ms. Hutchison is going to abstain from this vote. So just wanted to announce that on your behalf. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, and did not participate in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And so all those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. And that motion passes with 1 abstention. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. McQueen, for bringing that to our attention. There were no other action items out of closed session. It is now chance for us to look at our calendar for upcoming meetings. As Dr. Escamilla is going to run through that for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This Friday will be our virtual fall commencement. It will begin at 7 p.m. Take note on our website at delmar.edu or your social media site that connects to Del Mar College for those details. We will close the last day of the before the winter break will be December 18th, and we will return. Offices will reopen on January 4th. We will observe the Martin Luther King holiday on January 18th. There will be no board meeting in the month of January. Our regular board meeting will be February 9th. I can go on and on into the month. I just want to add 2 things that going into the the spring semester and coming out of the fall semester, where we are looking at the next legislative session. And so the 87th is in front of us, and so as such, we'll be very, very busy with that. And so we'll let you know what that's going to look like. But that, on top of everything else, is upon us. Finally, I would just like to wish everybody a happy holiday during this very different yet joyous time. We hope everyone can gather the appropriate time with family, whatever that may look like. It may look like what we're doing here. I know it will for us. But I just want to wish everybody happy holidays.
Thank you very much, Dr. Escamilla. Dr. Turner, welcome again. Thanks for your attention. I'm so sorry that we can't do this in person. This is not the way that we like to bring new regents on board. We like to do it in person and have an opportunity to have lunch with your family and others. But we will get back to that eventually. So with no other business before us, we will adjourn at 4:07 p.m. Happy holidays, everyone.